But I am indeed pleased to be back in Chicago with you, and I thank my good friend Dorothy for inviting me back. And I use a pretty tight agenda in and out of the country trying to fight for black folk. And sometimes my friends tell me, said, Dr. Anderson, we told you years ago, don't waste your time fighting for black folk. That's a waste of time and effort. Nobody cares about black issues. But I found out that even when they make me feel low, when I come into a situation like this, and I see all these beautiful black people sitting in front of me, you lift my spirits and make me feel proud. And I've thoroughly enjoyed fighting for you all night. And I'd love to be able to tell you, what I'm going to tell you, is that I think we got one of the biggest movements in the country right now. That all of a sudden, a lot of black folks saying, Dr. Anderson, I don't mind being black. You know, once you get used to the pain, it ain't that bad. And so I'm back in Chicago, and I'd like to thank my good friend Dorothy, as I said a few minutes ago, and I call her the Belle of Blues Town. Okay? And why do I call her that? Because you see, she's one of the few women in this country, and I got about 4 or 5 of them in different cities that have been trying to build black business communities. Dorothy is one of them, and I got some people in Alabama and California with Dorothy, with Rosie Milligan, in New York and Detroit with Joanne Watson. So a lot of black women are trying to do it, but they don't have the full support of a lot of the black men, so it's been very slow. But in this city, Dorothy had done a magnificent job, okay? I told her, I said, build a black business district for me and name it. And she named it, she built it, Black Blues Town, I think on 47th and Martin Luther King Boulevard. And I said, and once you build a black business community, mark it and close it. And what she did, she put up these silhouettes of black musicians all up and down on the poles, all down. That is outstanding and a historical event in itself. And this is a memorial to her efforts. This facility right here. I'm proud of it. It's a magnificent facility. You all should rally around this place. It's the only place in the country you can do this. And tell in and all your friends that anybody coming to Chicago to have any kind of event, or any of the local people having an event, you should be using this facility and help supporting it. She shouldn't be going around right now fighting and struggling, trying to pay the damn heating bill on the place because she doesn't have enough money to pay it. You all should be making sure this place stays warm in the winter and cool in the summer. Don't let her leave that whole burden on her. This is the only facility in the entire United States that is very decent, that's built by black folk, for black folk, in a black business district. And yet she's struggling. She needs your help. Now, she asked me when I came, she said, Doc, what I want you to do is talk about 2 things. First of all, give us a status report on black people in America and in the world. And secondly, give us some feedback on what you think Powernomics should be about for them. And I'm going to try to do that for you today. Now, I wrote down I got about 4 pages of notes here, which means I'm never going to get through all of them. And I got a few PowerPoint presentations to make to you. So you all have to bear with me. And I want you to, when your posteriors get too tired, start raising your hand, I'll let you go. Because right now, I got a lot of things to say to you, and you all are pivotal right now in this situation. Now, and I'm sorry to hear that she got pushed out of public office. She got pushed out of public office. You know why in this city? And this has nothing to do with my presentation yet. I'm just feeding this. She got pushed out because she was too black. Now, that just blows my cotton-picking mind. How can a person be too black? See, only in the black race does the word T-O-O mean something that's negative. See, I never heard about it being too Jewish, too white, too Indian, too Asians, too Arab, too Hispanic. But all of a sudden you put that word too in front of black folk, it becomes a negative. And so she got run out of office, pushed out of office, because she was too black, but she's looking out for you all. That just blows my mind. And now she's got to struggle to try to do the same thing she was trying to do in public office. When she called me to help find information on the reparations, to find all those white companies that profited from slavery. And she got a couple of enactments through the council here for reparations for black folk, holding the banks and a lot of these institutions accountable. And then she gets pushed out of office because she's too black. Blows my mind. But I'm going to get into my talk now. And I must start off with something like a question that was raised quite frequently by Jones Rivers. Said, can we talk? Can we talk today, people? Then I'm going to take off my coat if you all don't mind, and let's talk, okay? And now let's start with what we're going to talk about today. Instead, in terms of black status in this country. Let me tell you this. You have not progressed one iota. I don't care whether it comes out of a black mouth or a white mouth, a yellow mouth, orange mouth, pink mouth, any kind of mouth. Anybody tells you that black folk are progressing in America is lying to you. In proportional comparative terms, you're going backwards. You are exactly where you were in 1860 on the eve of the Civil War. You are suffering 6 to 8 times your fair share of everything that's bad. And you can't find one thing positive you can do as being a credit to the race. If you're looking at it in very specific terms, right now you're bearing, and let's take poverty. The poverty rate in America for black folk is 38% for black adults. And if black adults were to lose the little bit of money they have in their house or cars or furniture, it would jump to 67%, would go beneath the poverty line. Black children are someplace like 35% beneath the poverty line. On unemployment, you hear about it bragging about how the unemployment rate is coming down. That's a lie. It's not coming down for black folk. 6 years ago, when Obama went into office, at that particular time, the national unemployment rate for black folk was not what they were saying for whites. They talk about what the white unemployment rate is up to 7 and 8%. The unemployment rate for black folk was 35% nationally. And in in Baltimore, it was 48%. Detroit was 48%. Pittsburgh, 49%. And in New York, 52% for adult men, black men. And for youth, 87%. But nobody cares. Nobody's making an issue out of it. But when the unemployment rate in this country for whites back in the 1920s in the Great Depression hit 25%, they mobilized the entire country. Everything was mobilized to try to bring the unemployment rate for whites down from 25%. And here black folk, the unemployment rate somewhere around getting close to 50%, and nobody cares. Nobody cares. Now, what's the impact of that? They would say, well, you know, as a politician and a civil rights organization out there, what we're going to do is that we're going to try to find some social programs and find jobs for black folk. It won't cut it. There's only 3 things that any individual can do to earn a living in our society and be able to provide for his family and himself. It's in a combination of 3 things going straight up and down vertical. At the top level, what you want is a black person, first of all, to have a business. If he can't have a business to employ himself and be self-employed, you want him to be able to have a job at the first level. And if you can't get that, if blacks have no businesses and no jobs, you must go down to the second level. The second level is what we call social services, food stamps, welfare, all kind of assistance, public assistance. That's the second level. And if conservatives come along like they normally do and eradicate that, saying those are handouts for black folk, then you got kicked out of the second level, you go down to the third level. The third level is crime. Now, they talk about crime in Chicago and Washington, D.C. and around the country. The reason your crime rate is high, because what? You're not at the top level in the business ownership and employment. You go down to the second level to cut out all the social programs, the public assistance program. You go down to the bottom level of crime. Every black person must do a combination, sophistication, or elaboration of 3 things. Either work or on welfare, you steal. That's why you got the high crime in the city. It's going to stay high. It's going to stay high until somebody wakes up and smells the coffee and gets some damn sense in their head. Always want to come up with some social program where at best we can move them back up to level 2, Dr. Anderson, but we're never going to move up to level 1 again because they have their own employment and have a business. And that way they'd be competing with all these other groups coming in the country, and we don't want that. Why? Why don't you want it? Because you see, if you want money and wealth and power that Dr. Anderson talks about you must have, you can only get it, the best way of getting it is owning a business. I can redistribute wealth into the hands of black folks 6 to 8 times faster by through a business. They get tax write-off, they can get capital gains, they can get all kind of benefits for owning a business. You cannot get enriched as a black person in America by working a damn job. The only way you can enrich yourself working a job is if you're good at stealing. And here we are, and we buy the garbage every time because we don't understand the issues. Now, so for us, unemployment is the same as it was back during slavery. Why? When I looked at the records, I found out back in those days that in major cities like Washington, D.C., Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, New York, and Atlanta, Georgia, and Savannah, that even though you only had 200-some thousand black folk that were free, all the others, almost 6 million, were enslaved. But yet, what was the unemployment rate? They had full employment as slaves. But out of the 200,000 that were free, guess what? The employment rate for them was still what it is now, almost 35 to 40%. Just sleeping in alleys, sleeping in attics, sleeping on the corners, begging for food, walking, trying to do handyman jobs. The same thing with imprisonment at that time, that even though you only had 200-some thousand black folk free out across the country, I looked at the incarceration rate, imprisonment rate. But out of 200-some thousand black folk made up over 51% of all the prisoners. And here you are 150 years later, and guess what? You still make up over 51% of all the prisoners. Nothing has changed. And so you haven't changed your unemployment. We haven't changed the poverty rate. In terms of businesses, then, we're still less endowed with businesses than any group in the country. They're in this country right now. Black folk do not own and control anything in a greater access and value to 0.5%. Now, anybody that understands you're going to be economically competitive in this society, you must minimally have your share of proportionally to your population percentage. We make up 12.5% of all the population in America. That means we should be owning about 12.5% of the businesses. But we don't even have 1/2 of 1% of the businesses. How can you struggle in Chicago and be sufficient and competitive when you don't own and control anything of value? Don't own and control anything of value. And so what I'm saying is that we're not progressing in America. We got to start learning how to play this game and play it to win. And we've got to cut these poverty rates down. So what I'm going to be talking about with you this morning is how do we do it? How do we do it, especially in view of the fact that now we are a permanent underclass in the society? Going back to 1970, when I left President Carter's administration, where I was an assistant secretary in Commerce with rank, and I was also the only black in the history of this country that was a chairman for economic development for governors. And all of a sudden, Nixon came in 1970 when he got elected and said, what we're going to do is shut down the black civil rights movement in this country. We're going to shut down the black power movement in this country through a public policy called benign neglect, which means you take the focus off of black folk and put it on minority women, children, and immigrants. And now they included gays in it. And that would shut them down. They put that policy in effect in 1970. And guess what? Our leadership didn't raise any cane about it. They went along with it. They also turned around then and said, well, if you're going to do it for them, throw in women under Title IX. So now it includes everybody but black folk. And it's morphed over the last 50 years, so now the benign neglect policy now is called political correctness. Political correctness that you hear about every day on the TV means make black folk invisible, make everything black disappear. So nobody in America is going to address any issues pertaining to black folk. Nobody's going to mention the word black, not even by accident. If they're falling off the top of a building, they can save their lives and say black, they won't do it. Nobody's going to mention you. You have no substantive leadership. The leadership you got right now is totally committed to what they set up under the benign neglect policy, which means let's fabricate all these other groups to take away the benefits that black folks should be getting. Let's give it to them. We'll fabricate new groups and call them fabricated classes. We'll now come up with things called minorities, poor folk, people of color, diversity, multicultural, and gays. Those are fabricated classes. Now, I wrote the first affirmative action plan in 1970 for the state of Florida. When I was over education for the state, I did not write it for minorities. I didn't write it for gays and humpbacks and lesbians and midgets. I wrote it for black folk. Affirmative action is supposed to mean corrective action, correcting something that the government has done, not what your neighbor did or what a business did, but what the government did systematically, historically, and conscientiously, and committedly, and against a very specific group of people. Now, How did all these other groups get involved in? The government hadn't shut them out of anything, excluded and exploited and subordinated them. They only did that to black folk. But they set up all these fabricated groups. I don't hear any outcries from black folk in America, not from your leadership saying, hold it a second. How all of a sudden can you set up all these programs and call them minorities? What in the world is a minority? Is that a one-legged piano player? What's a minority? They don't know what the hell a minority is. Oh, I'm a minority. I'm a minority. And what are you going to do for minorities? I don't know. I ain't going to do a damn thing for minorities. I don't even know what a minority is. And you don't know what a minority is. Well, they said, well, Dr. Adams, we won't call them minority. Let's call it a people of color. What in the hell is a people of color? What is a people of? Everybody got color. And everybody in every group is a minority. And then and to make it worse, they went and threw in women. Now, he put women into a minority category when women are a majority. See, white women went into that. That's why right now in the affirmative action program, the white women take all the resources out of it, suck it out like a vacuum cleaner. Because you see, the white man was pretty smart. He outsmarted our people. He said, well, if I throw white women in there, and even though she slept in the same bed with me, raised my kids during slavery, and co-owned, co-controlled, co-influenced, and inherited 100% of everything I got from slavery, and she's got it, but I'll pretend that she hadn't got anything, and she's been abused, misused, and excluded. So I go down to Texas and look at the affirmative action program down there. Guess what? Out of 1 year alone, that white women got 78% of all the resources coming in contracts for service and goods. Hispanics got 21% and blacks got 0.9%. Because you got no leadership. Your leadership is stuck in minorities and poor folk, people of color, and gays. And I tell myself, hold a second. All those classes that you're talking about, those fabricated classes of Hispanics, Arabs, Asians, American Indians, and gays, those were previous slaveholders. Why are you giving special attention to the descendants of the slaveholders and giving no attention to the descendants of the slaves? That doesn't make any sense. I said, hell, I can go down to New Orleans. You're going to now all the attention now is being focused on gays and transsexuals. And you got the president now who wants to put transsexuals and gays into a protected class. Put black folk into a protected class. I go down to New Orleans, and one of the oldest, most popular restaurants in New Orleans is called the Two Sisters Restaurant. The Two Sisters Restaurant was two white women, two gay white women that during slavery was the biggest slave owners in New Orleans. The restaurant is still there. Now, somebody's elevator is not going to the second floor. Everybody's doing everything upside down and backwards instead of facing the realities of what black folks should be entitled to. And that's part of our problem, is saying, now, hold a second. We got to change some of these things. And one of the first things I want to tell you about is what we have to do is start talking about powernomics. How can powernomics help us? Because that's what Dorothy wanted me to talk about. Powernomics goes through history and tries to analyze critically for black folk. They say, what devices did they use to put us into this bottom barrel, put us at the bottom of the well? What did they do? And what I did, I put out three sets of books to give you an answer. The first one's called Black Labor, White Wealth. I went through, and Ebony and Jet calls the second Bible for black folk around the world. I critically analyzed all the schemes, techniques, tricks, laws, public edicts, everything that the dominant white society did to socially engineer you into the lowest level of a real-life monopoly game. You've been sold into it. And I said to myself, now hold a second. The only way black folk could be in their dilemma for 500 years in this country, there's only three ways they could have gotten into this position. Either it's because by providence and God declared that black folk were going to be at the bottom of the barrel for 500 years. And I said, I don't think God would be that mean just to black folk. So that wouldn't make any sense. I said, well, then the other thing is that it's because black folk are just DNA-wise, stuck totally on stupid with Gorilla Glue. And I said, no, I don't think my people are that damn stupid to volunteer to be slaves and to be Jim Crow segregated and benign neglected for 500 years. I said, well, what would be the third reason? And I said, the third reason was social engineering. You've been socially engineered into the lowest level of a real-life monopoly game. And what allowed everybody else to profit off of you. And so I said, now what I'm going to do is put out books like Black Labor, White Wealth that shows you, it takes you from all the way through history with timelines that show you every trick, every technique, how they maldistribute almost 100% of all this nation's wealth, power, resource, privileges, and controls of all levels of governments into the hands of the dominant white society. That's why you're not winning. You don't own and control a damn thing. So when you came out of slavery, whites owned 99.5% of everything of value. And the worst part about it is that nowadays, 87% of the 99.5% is frozen. It's locked into the dominant white society. You can't get it. It's locked into stocks, bonds, real estate, businesses, trust accounts, endowments. You can't get it. 87% is frozen. You can only compete for 13%. Only 13% of what you need is up for grab, and you got to compete against all these people coming into the country to get that. That's a tough uphill fight. And that's why Black Labor, White Wealth says, if my people have a halfway chance of fighting, how are they going to do it? When white folks say, well, the reason they're on the bottom is because they never took advantage of the opportunities. I said, what opportunities? Well, when we free and we set them free. Yeah, you set them free. Poor, penniless, no home, no clothes, no shoes, no wood, no animals, no farm, no land, no tools, no weapons, no religion, no education, nothing. Then told him, go out there, well, you black folk got to learn how to either root or die. Go out, that's the term. Go out, that's what they said in history. But you go out there and root or die. You got to make it with nothing. And yet, and throughout emancipation years, and even through the civil rights movement years, nobody went back and addressed that issue. Nobody went back and said, hey, when you came out of slavery, forget social integration, forget desegregation, forget civil rights. Go back and correct the conditions that you impose on black folk. You cannot deprive a group of people for 500 years of the fruits of their labor for no money, no value, no land, no history, nothing. And they say, go out and compete. Compete with what? And so I tell all my civil rights leaders, you are foolish with the things you keep pushing. Why do you keep telling black folk to go out and fight for equality and equal opportunity? I don't give a damn about no equality and equal opportunity. What in the world am I doing with equal opportunity and I haven't got a partner when to throw it out of them? Well, Dr. Anderson, we're going to give it, they got equality. People, listen to me. Y'all listen, okay? Because we're talking today now, okay? I want your full attention. Now, follow me along. Y'all are bright people. Follow me. If I got $5 in my hands as a black person as a result of slavery and Jim Crow segregation, and the white person got $1,000 in his hand, here you come along and say, I tell you what, I'm going to treat you all equally. I'm going to give all the one to eat, and what I do to one, I'm going to do to the other to make sure everybody be equal. And so I'm going to give everybody now $1,000. Now, he gives me as a black person $1,000, and now I got $1,000 and a $5 bill. He gives the white person $1,000, now he's got $2,000. I said, no. Please, I don't need no equality and equal opportunity. Not unless you're going to distribute some resources. So as I get into some stuff, and I'm going to track it. So I want some reverse engineering. And Powernomics is reverse engineering for what happened in Black Labor, White Wealth. Now, I wrote Powernomics to say, now, we can beat the system if we really try hard. They said, how are you going to do it? I said, because white racism is not perfect. They're good at it, but they're not perfect. We can beat it if we learn how to do some of the same thing they did, but we do it in reverse. We do reverse, and that's what the National Plan to Empower Black people about, is to take you all through history and everything they went, we're going to go bam and take it back where it's to our advantage by giving my people some self-interest, some self-realization, and some commitments to play as a team. Now, why would I say as a team? Because you understand that racism is a team sport. You either play as a team or you lose by default. My people are the only people that don't want to play as a team. And see, God sent and nature sent everybody and everything to the earth as a team. The birds play as a team, the animals play as a team, every group plays as a team. My people don't want to play as a team. Just like football or baseball. You go out to the team, and they say to me, say, God will say to Claud Anderson, God, I'm God. I want you to go out and be a coach and a manager for black folk. I want you to coach them on how to survive and compete. And the team he gave me, y'all know that team. And I got the black team. And I go out in the field, play on the team just like a football game. And I said, you go out and catch the ball and you throw it. And when he runs out to catch the ball, he won't even catch the ball. And this one over here, he won't even throw it to him. Then if the one who catches the ball, he gets it, guess what he wants to do? He wants to run the wrong damn way. And the one that sees him running with the ball, guess what? He'll tackle his own damn man. And then I called for a break and said, let's go into the huddle and figure out what we're going to do. Guess what he do? I'm going over to the wife. I'm telling him what y'all up to. I'm going to tell them what the next play is going to be. So they be aware of it. And so this morning as I get into my presentation, I haven't gotten to my presentation yet, y'all. So y'all got to forgive me for taking this long-winded opportunity. I haven't gotten to but if I bore you, let me know. But I haven't gotten to my presentation. Because you see, right now, as I'm getting into my stuff, I know in this group there's always a few provocateurs that always show up just strictly to sample out. And what I want to do is that give in all fairness, I'm always a fair man. I want to give all the Sambos and provocateurs, before I start giving my presentation today, I'm going to give you 60 seconds, I'm going to turn my back. So you all can get up and sneak out. That way, and don't worry about running telling white folk what Claud Anderson said, you know. They can go buy my books. And don't waste your time by saying, well, I disagree with Dr. Anderson when the question time come up, and he said if 2 and 2 is 6, I know 2 and 2 is 29. Don't waste your time, because anything I tell you today is my own preference for information. It's based on my own collective experiences, and based on my knowledge of history. I cannot find not one single black man in the history of this nation that had a greater variety of experiences that I had at the highest levels of government, business, education, and everything. So my personal opinion is not even debatable, so don't waste your time in the Q&A trying to debate me. Because I don't debate anything about how I feel about black folk. I'm committed to black folk. And people say, well, Dr. Anderson, that's racism. We're going to deal with that. Because you see, racism is a team sport. As I said, and is a competitive relationship between groups of people who are competing for the ownership and control of resources. And once they get a sufficient amount of it, they then use it against other people in other groups. A black person cannot be a racist. And so don't let them BS y'all anymore about well, he looked out for black folk, he's a racist. And I would love to have some blacks who had enough wealth and resources and things to be able to help black folk and enough power to help black folk. When you own and control less than 1/2 or 1% of anything of value, you can't do anything with anybody. And so don't worry about them calling you a racist. And see, a racism is a contest. And I want you all to have a group self-interest today when I finish with you, a group self-interest. In a race, the last thing you need to do is be worried about who else is in the damn race. Look at back, so well, you know what, we're in a race, but we're going to start out together and end up together. That defeats the whole purpose of being in a race. Black people are the only people that always want to go with somebody else. Look out for everybody else. Spend all of our time, well, we got to look out for the poor, the handicapped, the gays, the midgets, the Asians, the Arabs, the Indians. They can't even go to the bathroom without, okay. Can I get some of those Asian Arabs go with me to the bathroom back there? And every darn word they use, they get it. Well, I'm gonna go through that history and tell you why. Let me get on with my history. And what I want you to do is this. As I go through I'm gonna recite some history to you. And every time I come to a point, there's a part of that reverse engineering, and y'all take note, I'm gonna raise my hand. So when we get into the structure and the plan, what you have to do, you'll understand why I'm asking you to do it, okay? So watch this now. Now, for all intent and purpose, slavery as we know it from the history books started, let's say, about the 14th century. In about the 14th century, you had a guy named Henry the Navigator who off the coast of Africa went down there and he found and captured about 16 blacks. And he took them back to Europe and back to Italy. And he gave them to the Pope, okay? Gave them to the Pope in about 1450. And the Pope in the Vatican didn't use these black slaves until up about 1488. What they used them as servants. And so religion then got invested into slavery. Then by 1488, Pope Innocent put out a public edict that said, we found a good thing with having these slaves around here. And so if you all want to enslave somebody, it's get yourself some of these black people. They're good, hard workers, they're strong people. Use them. And when that happened, that became a new form of slavery. Now, why is that important? Because always on these Fox channels, you always hear white folk talking about, well, black folk always talking about slavery, as if they're the only people ever been enslaved. And therefore, everybody with slavery is old as the earth. That's a lie. Because, see, up to that point in time, in 1488, before Pope Innocent put out his public edict about slavery, that you saw using black folk, there were only 3 ways of enslaving a person prior to that. You enslaved a person either because he was a prisoner of a war or conflict you've been fighting and you got him captured, he could be a slave, or 2, because of personal indebtedness, or 3, for religious reasons. But in 1488, a new form of slavery started. This time it was based on what? Color. Never in the history of this world have we had slavery based on color, skin color. And so when you hear these people on Fox channels, the O'Reillys and the Hannitys and all of them talking, and Rush Limbaugh's talking about, well, everybody's been enslaved. Why blacks always talking about they think they were picked on because they were enslaved. Yes, they were picked on. You never had slavery based on skin color. So in 1488, that became the issue. Now, about 4 years later, about 1492, Columbus supposedly, allegedly discovered America in his travels around the world. He came to the continents of North and South America and Central America and went back and reported to the European societies something that's very important that they wanted to hear. Because you see, in the 14th century, the European continent was being devastated. It was in real bad shape, real bad shape. They were suffering from poverty, crime, and starvation. The entire European continent was being depressed and distressed because of diseases, food shortages, and crime. They needed help. So when Columbus reported back saying, I found a lot of land that's very sparsely populated, not very many people there. And said, and therefore, if we can go there and get that, maybe, the people around him said, maybe now we can solve some of our problems. we can start a new form of commerce. Because up to that point in time, in the end of the 14th century, the primary medium of commerce was called mercantilism. And so when he got back and reported back by the early 1500s, all of a sudden they say, well, now, if we got this free land over here, we take some of this land, and we got these black bodies based on skin color, they're going to be slaves, we got a good combination here. Look what we got in our hands. We got labor that we don't have to pay, and we got free land we won't have to buy. And so at that point in time, a race started, RAC started. All these continents, all these nations on the continent of Europe then said, we're going to get into a contest. We're all going to put ships together, and we're going to sail to the Americas to get that free land. In that time, you had Italy, Portugal, Spain, Germany, France, Russia, Sweden. All of them jumped in to try to sail to the Americas and capture land. And what they said, now, the way we're going to do it is go down and get some of those blacks out of Africa, and we're going to start hauling their rear ends over there to America. And we're going to enrich ourselves. How? Free land and free labor. And as they came into America, that created what you all hear on the TV set all the time. My hand is up. Is what you call the American dream. The American dream is for immigrants to come to this country and get free land and free labor. Nowadays, it's called free benefits. That's what they were coming here for. And don't be that BS they put in the history book while they were coming here looking for religious opportunities. Now, nobody's that big a fool. When most of the European countries was still rather sparsely populated, why would anybody sail 4 months across an ocean, perilous ocean, to come over here so he can pray? And so they all started pouring into America. Now, I gave you those 2 points now. The religious got involved, and now the American dream popped up. The American dream was coming to the country. And now, so when they decided to do it, they said, we're going to move from mercantilism to a new form of economics. Let's call it capitalism. Because now we got free land and free labor, a new form of economics was being developed. It's called capitalism. Now, what is capitalism? Very important for y'all to remember this now. Capitalism is owning and controlling the land, the tools, and the resources, and using other people's labor to enrich yourselves. That's why I told you all earlier about the top steps, having businesses and business up at the top. Again, to practice capitalism, you must have businesses. Again, capitalism is owning and control the land, the tools, and which included blacks' backs, and the resources, and enriching yourself of other people's labor. That became capitalism. So capitalism started like about 1504, 1505. Now, about 10 or 15 years later, a new thing popped up. Remember these points when I get to these charts in a few minutes. And that was called politics. Modern politics came into existence about 10 to 15 years after capitalism started. Now, capitalism was owning, controlling the money and the resources and the tools. Why did it need politics? Politics is a tool that capitalism uses to maintain control. That's what politics is. Politics has that one role: protect the property that's owned by the businesses and protect the businesses. So you all hear about Katrina destroying New Orleans and say, well, why don't they send out, we got all these black folk down there, and nobody's going to save them and rescue them for 2 weeks. They're out there, they're starving, no food, no water, no clothes, nothing. And they send troops in there, send military troops in there. They're walking around with guns. Black folk don't know. They don't send the army or the police in to protect and save black folk. You're going in there to protect and save the capital that people invested in businesses. So the primary process of politics jumped up, and they said, here's the way we'll do it. And they do it just the opposite of what you hear people saying. They said, well, politics is the art of compromise. That's a lie. Politics has never been the art of compromise. Politics is a process that's based on quid pro quo, which means something for something. One hand washes the other. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. You take care of me, I'll take care of you. You put me in office, I owe you. Now again, raise my hand. Black folk never learn how to use politics. They're the only people in this country who keep trying to practice politics by, I'm going to put him in office, and that way it just makes me feel good. I don't want anything. I tell you, somehow God's got to give me a break. Nobody's supposed to be that stupid. They said, well, Dr. Evans, we got a major election coming up, and all of our leaders keep telling us it's important that we go out and vote and exercise our right. Hell no, you don't go out and get no exercising by voting. If you want to exercise, take your butt down to a gymnasium, take out a gym membership and go exercise. Or jog around the park for exercise. Take a long walk for exercise. You go to the voting booth to try to get benefits. And quit trying to always, well, Dr. Evans, well, how about all those blacks that gave their lives for a right to vote? No fool ever gave his life for a right to vote. Some blacks might have gotten killed trying to get the vote because he's looking for resources. He wanted to get something. And I hear people say, well, Dr. Anderson, well, you know, all politics is local. That's another lie. Politics is not local. Everything in our system works on a trickle-down system. It runs from the highest to the lowest, from the top to the bottom. So later on in our concepts, in the power numbers concepts, you're going to see what I'll be talking about in a few minutes. So change a few of the slides for me. These are the books. Give me the next one, please. What I'm talking about for you to do is start pooling. I was talking about earlier about playing as a team. You pool your resources, produce, distribute, and consume in ways that creates goods and jobs for Black America. Next one, please. Now we come into this part now. So now when these people landed in America, what they wanted to do then is say, well, we got all this land, we got these black slaves. What do? We got to do something with it. How are we going to work this game? So they said, so you got Jefferson and Madison and all of them. They said, okay, well, let's draft a constitution, making this a land of democracy, a land of democracy. And so and what they were concerned about was this. Around 1750, way before the Constitution was drafted, at that time, black folk made up somewhere between 38 and almost 40% of the population of the country, that general range between 30 and 40%. And Indians made up the other lion's share. And so the Continental Congress was sending word back to Europe saying, don't send any more slaves over here because if these slaves get together, these Indians, they can run us out of the country. And that's why they had the Revolutionary War. They said, well, we're going to fight because to take over the country before these blacks and these Indians get together. That's why every Indian treaty put in an exclusion saying that Indians were to side with the whites to maintain slavery. So after the Revolutionary War, they wrote a constitution. And in that constitution, that's where they put the box, a social construct that got you locked right now today that you've never gotten out of. If you don't start playing the game right, you'll never get out of it. The Constitution became the first affirmative action plan in the entire United States. Remember that. The United States Constitution is an affirmative action plan for whites. That's what it was set up for, to be able to endow them with resources. And so in 1779, they set that up construct. Now, when you go read the Constitution, again, our leadership never understood it. It starts saying, we the people. Now, let me go back and explain that to you, why it says that. Because the week before the Constitutional Convention was resolved, they closed the doors and put up guards around Philadelphia to make sure nobody could hear what they were talking about. They were saying, how do we justify to the world being able to talk about a land of democracy and a land of opportunity for all people? At the same time, we're going to enslave all these black folk. They said, here's what we'll do. We write that Constitution, and Jefferson understood this, and he tried to make some change, and Madison finally cemented the document. What we'll do is that we'll separate them out. When we're talking about white folk, we'll use very broad and ambiguous terms that would be different from the broad, ambiguous terms that we use for black folk. Whenever we say we the people and the citizens, we are talking about white folk. And we ever talk about black people, we'll say things, we'll use terms for them that are very ambiguous that you can't figure out. So that we'd be in a political correct situation all the way back in 1789. We call black folk, we'll say they'll be 3/5 of a human being. Those people who are 3/5 of a human being, those people who are equated to an animal, what we call a special species, those who are an unhappy lot. That's why never in the Constitution they ever used the word slave or blacks. Whenever they talked about black folk, they were talking about, they used these broad terms that you couldn't figure out. When the Constitution talks about we the people, those people, they're not talking about you. And that's why one of the quotes they always like to use, that God is a God-given right for everybody to come to America for life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Now, what they didn't tell you is that initially, it didn't say happiness. It says life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. Because you see, black people were property. You are still property. And so in the Constitution, they changed it because they said that would be too hard to say. And Jefferson had to rewrite it twice and change it from property to happiness. But yet then, we still got leaders always having a march on Washington talking about that promise that we all have life, liberty, and happiness. No, nobody ever promised you any happiness. And to think that whites are that foolish to get on a boat again for 4 months across the Atlantic, coming to America to look for happiness. Nobody came here looking for happiness. But our people keep quoting it, reading the Constitution, don't understand it. And in the Constitution, all the way through it, when they say we the people, the citizens, they're not talking about black folk. You were not citizens. You were what they call a special species. You were property. You were 3/5 of a human being. You were never included in the Constitution. And so now by 1760, before we get to the second Constitution, they wrote a second Constitution. Now, why did they write a second Constitution? The second Constitution, which they don't ever divide up for you because they don't want you all to know this, starts with the Civil War. And because the first Constitution had you totally shut out. But back in about 1803, they had a thing called a Marbury and Madison decision, where the Supreme Court jumped in to make a ruling. And the Supreme Court has been ruling negatively against black folk now for all these years, exercising authority that they don't have. Point. The Supreme Court does not have the authority to get involved in issues pertaining to black folk about rights, privileges of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment and the civil rights laws. But they get away with it because no black leadership and no black citizens raised Cain about it. They don't have that authority. The United States Supreme Court only has authority to do three things. One, to engage in situations where a lower court appealed. Two, is that where a federal employee failed to carry out his responsibilities, or secondly, about ambassadorial appointments. The Supreme Court does not have authority to overrule Congress. Now, why is that important? Now, Supreme Court grabbed that authority in 1803 in the Marbury-Madison decision. But they didn't use it again until 1857. In 1857, you had a black guy named Dred Scott that went to court trying to say he was free and wanted to be free because he left Missouri going up to Ohio. And then that decision, this court came back and says, a black man has no rights that a white person is bound to respect. That was called the Dred Scott decision. That was the United States Supreme Court. United States Supreme Court had never used that authority against black folk in the history of the nation until they got to the Dred Scott decision, because they don't have that authority. And he says black people have no rights. Very important point. Now, if he said black people have no rights, did anybody in this room hear me, in this auditorium, and I guess you about 1,000 of you here, did anybody hear me say anything about gays didn't have any rights? In the Dred Scott decision, they say anything about women didn't have any rights, Hispanics, Asians, and Arabs. They said black people, man, had no rights. That was in 1857. Now we jump over to, and after the Civil War and during the Civil War, you had a bunch of radical Republicans say, well, what we need to do now is to reform the Constitution and try to give black people some rights. And so the Emancipation Proclamation came out, and they put out then finally they wrote the first civil rights law in 1865. And the civil rights law was just the opposite of what you hear nowadays. Point up again for the Powernomics program. The civil rights laws had nothing to do with anything but black people. Trying to go back and correct the Dred Scott to see where black folk had no rights. And on the House of the Congress, you had congressmen, white congressmen, radical, what we call a few liberal Republicans, that says that in this country, there's only two things that a black person will ever be. They're going to be slaves or they're going to be free. Minimally, for a black person in America to be free, you must have 40 acres, a mule, and $100. I haven't heard black folk make an issue out of that. You must have minimally have 40 acres, a mule, and $100. And guess what? Andrew Johnson, who replaced Lincoln, vetoed it. Because why? Because it was an economic issue. Civil rights was an economic issue. I told you that going back to capitalism. Black people are the only people in this country that continue to try to practice, and is being forced to try to practice capitalism without capital. It can't be done. That's why I'm going through this exercise before I get deep into my notes. I want y'all to understand these points. You cannot practice capitalism without capital. Now, let's go back now. So they turned black folk loose. Guess what? They didn't get the 40 acres and a mule. Neither did they get the $100. They turned them loose free, penniless, poor, powerless, diseducated, non-educated, no religion, no home, no land, no family, nothing. That's how you walked out of slavery. And since that time, guess what? To the present time, the average white person in America has 3,500 times the average black man's wealth. The average white person has 3,500 times more money than you got. That means in America right now that there are 2 white men in America alone got more wealth than all 43 million black people put together. How can you practice anything when 2 men own more and control more than you do, than the entire race? You got to start watching these Powernomics principles. You got to learn how to start redistributing against some wealth and money. And we're going to talk about that as we get further along. And the Supreme Court, again, as I said, was one of the culprits. The Supreme Court then came in and vetoed the 1865 Civil Rights Law. And next year they came back with the radical Republican, came back next year in 1866 and reenacted it again. But this time they left off a lot of the economics off of it. Because they said, well, we'll put it in place if you leave off some of the money stuff. And then this time they passed it, even though it was vetoed. And by 1868, it was converted over to be the 14th Amendment. This is for you all, remember this. In the 13th Amendment and the 14th Amendment, it stipulated that these amendments and the civil rights laws are strictly and solely for black people. And yet here we are today. Everybody debating how all these immigrants come in tomorrow, they want their 14th Amendment rights. I don't hear any blacks raising Cain and say, how are you going to use something that doesn't even belong to you? And then the Supreme Court saying, well, you know, we can't have any color specific issues for reparations for black folk. We can't do anything for give black folk preferential treatment. We can't support affirmative action for black folk. That's what those laws were written for, strictly for black folk. And the United States Supreme Court distorted and converted those things over to be for everybody. They went back to what I told you a few minutes ago in the Constitution. Says if you use very broad, ambiguous term and make anything for everybody, then black folk can't use it. If you talk about minorities, that doesn't give black folk anything because nobody's got enough sense or the ability to go inside minorities and cut it open and see what's in there for black folk. When they say people of color, black folk haven't got enough sense to say, hold a second, don't put me in those very broad, ambiguous categories. I want to know, and I want you all, when we get to the end of this thing, to understand this. You started demanding things strictly and solely for black folk. Even when they started talking about the civil rights issue at that time, as I told you, civil rights was not a social issue. It had nothing to do about whether or not you liked anybody. It was economics, strictly economics. So when I go to our civil, I look around and say, now, if we're going to talk about rights, we're going to talk about rights. Are we going to be very specific? Or are we going to be broad? I said, now, women, what are you going to talk about? Women talk about women's rights. Gays talk about gay rights. Veterans talk about veterans' rights. Indians talk about Indian rights. Senior citizens talk about senior citizens' rights. You get the black folk, you know what they talk about? Civil rights. Who in the hell is civil? I mean, even if I had something to send to I don't know where to send it. I don't know where civil lives. We haven't got enough blacks in position of authority to say, no, don't send a damn thing to civil, send it to black folk. When am I going to hear about black rights? Never have I heard it since back in these days and anybody talked about black rights. They're going to talk about, well, minority rights and gay rights and Hispanic rights. No, talk about black rights and quit talking about civil. Never go into a marketplace or a political arena in very broad and ambiguous terms. That's the point in powernomics. Never go into a term. Always go in like a rifle, not like a shotgun. You go straight in the bullet and say, no, I don't care about anything you're dealing with minorities. You got something for minorities? Cut it open. Let's see what you got there for black folk. Nothing, huh? You be very specific and say, I want to know what's coming to us. And the reason that's important is because all these other groups coming in now, they're classified as fabricated groups and classes. They're eating your lunch. All the things that should have been going to you, they are getting them. There is no, and the point being at this point now, down here, when you get to benign neglect, at the bottom of 1970, there is absolutely no constitutional or legal reason to have Hispanics, Arabs, Asians, Eskimos, women, gays, midgets, humpbacks, lesbians, one-eyed, crippled, deaf, dumb people into an affirmative action program. You make a joke out of black folk because what you're doing is giving the pretense that all of a sudden that all things are equal, that somehow those people are mistreated as badly as black folk were. That's a lie. You add insult to injury to use these very broad terms and put black folk in those broad categories. Do not let anybody put you in any broad categories. You stay strictly as you are. Now I got some black people say, well, Dr. Anderson, how about African Americans? I don't even know what in the hell an African American is. Our people are so inclined to try to find out how to escape, to get away from blackness. They'll come up with anything that doesn't make any damn sense. Well, Dr. Anderson, I'm an African American. No, you are not. What in the hell is an African American? Let me tell you one thing. Even the word African itself, in different nations, meant the land of the blacks. If that's what it meant, then just go say black. You don't have to say about African American. Anybody in America is an African American. Because you see, the first human beings on earth you see, I love y'all. That's what I'm telling you this stuff, okay? Every human being on earth is an African American because the first human beings on earth were in Africa. And they migrated out of Africa and around the world. So anybody now, any place in the world that comes to America, he is an African American. But once you start using these very broad terms, you lose your exceptionality, which we're going to start getting into. You lose your exceptionality. Anytime you give up your blackness, you are through. There is no justifiable reason for me doing anything for black folk in this country if they're not black. Because, see, all these other people came here. They are guests in America. Now, let's go back to this time when these people started pouring into the country. They came here looking for unearned benefits. And I told you they came here looking for, not for rights, they came here looking for resources, to own and control resources. So that based on what they call the the American dream, every white person came to America was eligible to get free land. They could get free land. Under the Homesteading Act, they could pick up 640 acres of land free. Just for building a house on it, they could get 640 acres of free land. Then under the Homesteading Act, for every slave they owned, they could pick up another 160 free acres of land for every slave they owned. Thomas Jefferson and Madison each got over 100,000 free acres of land. Patrick Henry, who said, give me life, liberty, or give me death, he picked up over 65,000 acres of free land. And when they opened up the Oklahoma Territory, when you see one of these old westerns, they all riding, trying to drive stakes in the ground to get free land. In a 24-hour period, the United States gave them over 2 million acres of land in 24 hours to whites coming in from Europe just to go out there and get free land for land grants. And so in the history of this nation, they have given up over 1 billion acres of land to whites, free. And that not only did they get the free land, but the free land and double and triple in value every 20 years. That's why they got all the wealth. And on that land, all the gold, silver, chrome, bauxite, magnesium, and timber increased in value. And out of that 1 billion acres of land. And by the same token, they denied giving black folk 40 acres. Yeah, I might be losing y'all. I don't know if you're with me now. How are you all going to progress in Chicago and without a poweronomics plan? You don't even know what the game you're in. You don't even understand the game. Because right now the game is based on capitalism, wealth, what you own and control. It's what you own and control that determines your equal opportunity. If you don't own and control anything, you got no money, you got no rights. Your rights come from what you own and control. If you don't believe me, go right now down to Ritz-Carlton Hotel and say, I want one of them big expensive rooms, one of them $2,000 night rooms with lobster and steak all day long. They say, how are you going to pay for it? You say, well, I got civil rights. Yeah, you're going to have a civil right, all right. And I always got this, well, Dr. Ansel, well, we got social integration. And see, when the blacks came out, blacks weren't even looking for social integration in the first place. They were looking for desegregation. But whites tricked them again, tricked my people every time. Y'all want some desegregation? Okay, here's what we'll do. Here's what we'll do to make sure y'all don't come up with nothing, okay? If you all are willing to give up all your schools, black communities, black churches, black businesses, black neighborhoods, black restaurants, black theaters, black entertainment, black history, black leadership, we'll let y'all come sit in our hotels and come in our restaurants. See, they only did that to black folk. And see, that's just like, when you go to the airport, and they tell you, well, okay, before you can get into this sacred area here in the terminal, what you got to do is you got to divest yourself of all your personal gear, anything that might set the alarm off. So you got to take out your wallet, your purse, your money, your keys, your computer, your books, your clothes, your jacket, even throw your drawers on the table. Yeah, don't hit them. To make sure that you're safe and sanitized when you walk on these planes. Now, and black folk did it. See, because they walked away from their blackness. See, only one time in history did blacks want to be black. Between about 1915 and about 1940, blacks really got into black. They said, we're going to be black. And so then W.B. Du Bois said, I tell you what then, what we're going to do, we're going to come out with black politics. And after he did that, then Marcus Garvey said, well, we're going to have black politics, let's have black economics. And then Carter G. Woodson said, well, if you're going to have black economics and black politics, let's have black culture and black education. And then about 1935, then Elijah Muhammad said, well, if you're going to have black education, black culture, black economics, black politics, let's have black religion. Then by late 1930s, then the artists in this country said, well, let's have black music and black entertainment. And they created a thing called the Harlem Renaissance groups. Now, that lasted up until about the late 1930s, but all of a sudden, your black civil rights leaders, your black ministers, your black newspapers say, this is too much blackness. We got to get away from all this blackness because why? Well, because one day we might want to go live with other people. So let's get something called universality, where we all going to be a part of a great big universe. And so they started killing it off. They said, well, by 1940, they said, well, we can just get a little bit of universality. And all of a sudden they said, well, I'll tell you what. And the one guy named Rick with the Brooklyn Dodgers, he said, I'll tell you what. We're going to hire one black baseball player named Jackie Robinson. Now, at that time, you see, blacks had about 8 major teams, okay? And they had 2 big leagues. And blacks owned their own playing fields, equipment, and they had the best baseball players in the country and in the world. And the dumb white society say, well, those are your resources. Would you be willing to give up those resources? All those resources, and they're the best players, if we take one of y'all and put on a white team called the Brooklyn Dodgers? Yes, sir, we sure loves that. And went for it, just like a pig to slop. Jumped into it. Oh, we got a black baseball player. They used to have all the best baseball players in the country and in the world. They gave it all up just to get one on the board on them. Then next they went to the basketball team. Said, how about you got the best basketball players? They said, well, would you all give up all those best basketball players and put one on the team, white team? Sure would. And so guess what? They closed out all the black basketball leagues. And the remnants, what was left over, a guy named Abe Saperstein picked them up and said, hell, I'll take these players and I'll go start the Harlem Globetrotters and take them all around the world because nobody can beat them playing. Nobody can beat the Harlem Globetrotters. I'll use them. And black folks, you might have the Harlem Globetrotters, but we got a black boy playing with a white team now. Then they went to the colleges and said, well, now you got all these black colleges and black schools that blacks worked hard, sold wood, pyres, flies, coal, and made flowers just to build these black colleges so our kids can get a decent education. What would you want? They said, well, we want to go to the white schools. And we'd be willing to give up our colleges if you just let some of our kids go to the white colleges and white universities. Now, never on this earth would you ever hear, for instance, Catholics saying, we'll give up Catholic University in Notre Dame just to go to put some Catholics in a Protestant school. You want to hear Jews say, we'll give up, what's the big, I can't think of the big university they got now. No, but anyway, they're one of the biggest ones they got. They would never give up theirs just to go to a Protestant school. We give up anything to get nothing. We dominate. We got the genius and the talent for creating all the music and dances on the earth. And guess what we're always trying to do? Cross over, somebody else can do it. Teach them how to play blues. Teach them how to sing jazz. Go into their white churches so they can learn how to sing gospel. Anything that is stupid, we'll do it. It makes no sense. We give away our assets and resources, and that's why we can't practice capitalism. With all these resources we need to learn how to dominate and control them to bring wealth into our communities. That's why I'm so proud of Dorothy, because she got Blues Town. You all should rally around Blues Town and build everything off this center. And so if we go down, so social integration didn't help us, it hurt us. We lost everything we had as a resource what we were practicing. Before social integration, what it came in fact as a concept, social integration, we had decent black communities all across America. And in those communities we had restaurants, we had hotels, we had cab companies, we had our own movie theater chains. We had 3 movie theater chains across America. We had Norman Production in Jacksonville, Florida. We had Miss Shaw right here in Chicago, one of the big movie producer studios for black folk. We had Hollywood Production. We made our own films with our own distribution companies. But guess what? When integration came, we gave it up so we can go to the white movie theaters. And in North Carolina, for instance, my family was one of the families that owned the only major black bus line in the entire United States. We didn't have one or two buses. We had over 500 buses that serviced both the black neighborhoods and the white neighborhoods. And guess what? When they integrated the bus lines down in Montgomery, and that movement came up to North Carolina, up to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, the blacks in Winston-Salem says, we want to ride on the white front of the white buses too. We said, but we don't have any white buses for you to ride on. Well, get some so we can ride on them. So the Safe Bus Company in Winston-Salem, you go on your computer, you can find this on your, just type of Safe Bus Company in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We had to go out of business so blacks can sit on the front of the white buses. And see, one of the basic power numbers principles up again, it says, it doesn't make any difference where you're sitting on the darn bus. I know it gives you some pride and comfort because you think you're being looked down on because you're sitting on the back. I had more fun on the back than I did on the front. Rebuild black communities in Chicago. Now, why did I say black communities? Because you see, you have no communities. We're the only people in America that don't have not one single community in America. Everybody has communities but us. All we got are neighborhoods. A neighborhood is totally, absolutely useless. That is a total waste of time. All we got in America are black neighborhoods. I can get in a car right now and drive around and find your neighborhoods. A neighborhood is like a bucket with holes in it. You pour water, it runs out. To have a community, you must have three things to have a community in it. You must have a wholly independent economic structure that can provide goods, service, products, and things for your own people, and jobs and tax bases for your own people. You have not got one black neighborhood in America that can provide jobs, products, and services and goods to take care of themselves. And you sit there talking about terrorism coming to America. They're going to wipe you out. The immigrants are going to wipe you out. First of all, when the terrorists come, they're going to shut you down. All they got to do is drop blue-blooded plague in here or some anthrax. You'll never get out. You don't own any drug stores. You don't own any food stores. You own nothing. You cannot feed yourselves. You don't have any gas stations. You are totally dependent on other people to take care of your needs because you don't have those roots sunk into the ground to take care of you here in Chicago. And all these black folk on TV running around all day long chasing balls, football, basketball, tennis ball, golf balls, dancing and singing, pretending they're having a ball, telling jokes. And you should at least control 4 basic things. You should be trying to control water, food, medicine, and energy to be able to survive and compete. You don't own it in this city. You haven't got anything in this city. And just as happy as a sissy in a CC camp. And so what we got to do then, and things that are going to come after you and wipe you out if you don't have this, there are about 4 basic things you got to watch out for. One is going to be social integration. That's going to knock our brains out. It's already knocked most of it out already. The second thing is immigration. These immigrants are coming here. They're going to clean your tubes. They're cleaning. The immigrants are coming here, not coming here to be your friend, to get along with you. They're coming here to displace you, to get ahead of you, to get over you. That's why right now the Hispanics are saying that black folk are through in this country, that you've had your day. I don't know what they're talking about. We haven't had it, but they think you've had your day. And because now they're in control of affirmative action. Everybody's trying to create them. Watch all your campaigns. They're only talking about getting the Hispanic vote. They don't want your vote. Because you're not playing the game to win. You're not playing politics the way I told you to play politics by looking to get benefits. You're not playing it to win. And we're going to get to that in a minute on how you learn how to play to win in Powernomics. So what we'll say that these immigrants coming here, they're taking your lunch and eating it while you run around trying to get along with them. They are not going to march on your behalf. So go to the next slide for me, please. I want to get through these few slides real quickly, then I got to get to the real stuff. I know you're getting tired. Let me stay with you a little bit longer. Now, this is the problem you ran into with social integration, what they should have been desegregation. See, back in the old days, in the 50s, what you were suffering from was this throughout history, where whites were on top and were superior, blacks were on the bottom and inferior. They had a barrier called the racial line, okay, the color line, some of them call it. And so blacks on the bottom doing slavery and Jim Crow segregation. Now today, this is what you got. Now you went up today, you got whites still on top, but the blacks are still at the bottom, but all they did was a slanted line a little bit. So that some of those blacks on the far corner over there where it looks like it's high, those are the ones that are making the big money running with a ball. And playing and got their own TV shows. They still don't know they're still underneath the line. And on the far side is that what I want you all to do under Powernomics is that we're going to take that line, instead of having it like this, we're going to socially engineer it and turn it what? Straight up and down. So we can go straight up and do everything vertical. Next slide for me, please. Now, back during slavery and Jim Crow segregation, we did have we had ethnic communities already. We had them in 63rd and Cottage Grove used to be a fabulous place for black folk. 31st and 35th and all that area was a fabulous place for black folk. We had Harlem, we had Buttermilk Bottom, we had Sweet Albany down in Atlanta, Georgia. We had our little communities. But what happened was that we were not unified. We had the core black community, but what we didn't have the resources. At the bottom down here, we didn't have the resources because they didn't give you anything when they put you out of slavery or shot you out of slavery. They didn't give you anything. You had no resources. They didn't want you to have resources. So what we're proposing then is that, see, we scattered over here. We're scattered, still didn't have the resources. Go up here now. What we're going to do at the top is go back and build our core black communities again. And I want this area in Chicago, with you all, with this being the center of y'all's activity, to be able to have a core community, a core black community here, where you all can come in and park your cars every day. Don't worry about living in the suburbs of Chicago. That's a waste of time, because those big riots come, these big trouble come, these terrorists. Everybody knows where you live out there bragging about you in the suburb. Well, I'm the only one who lives out here by myself. Yeah, you're going to wish you had lived out there by yourself. You better try to come back and wrap yourself in some black folk and build your own black community. That's why I can go across America and I can come in, just left California. I can come out there and I can see I got Korea towns, China towns, Japan towns, Little Saigons. I can go out to Florida and get Little Havana, Little Hialeah. I can go up to Italy and get Little Italy. I can find Germantown, Pole towns, Hockett town, Cork towns, Russian town, and Greek towns, but I can't find a damn black town. You're so busy trying to integrate, you have nothing left. As I told Dorothy this morning, you cannot make black coffee better by integrating cream into it. It doesn't get any stronger. You weaken it. If you think integrating something into something, making it strong, go out right now and drop sugar into your gas tank, see if it can make it any stronger. You got to work to keep your people unified so you can play as a team. I told you, God sent you here as a team player. And whether you like it or not, God has arbitrarily assigned you to a skin color team. He doesn't care whether or not you don't like it. Well, I don't want to be black. That's tough. You are. You're here now. Let me have the next slide, please. I got to move a little fast before y'all get mad and leave me. Okay. But what I want you all to understand is that everything is vertical. Always go vertical. Always go vertical. Never go horizontal. Never in anything. Never go horizontal in a race-based society. And see now, look, the difference down here is that back during the old days, doing social integration, that's horizontal. We kept going back and forth from the back of the bus to the front of the bus, from the black water fountain to the white water fountain, and moving from the black ghetto to the suburbs. Those are horizontal moves. It didn't elevate you, make you a better, or more powerful person because you moved to the suburbs. And see, only a few blacks trickle up on the old horizontal system. And what is a horizontal issue? A horizontal issue is anything that pertains to everybody. Anything that pertains to everybody, stay away from it. I told you in the Constitution they did that intentionally. It meant you say, well, I'm going to go join the minorities. Stay away from those things. Now, let me give you some other things, for instance. Gender. That's a horizontal issue. I got women all around the world. So why would I go leave black folk to go join a women's group with all these different women? And yes, some white women have problems, and some women might have separate problems. But trying to compare a gender issue or a woman's issue with a race issue is like trying to compare a headache with cancer. It might be a headache being a woman once in a while, but it's cancerous being black and being a nigger in this society. So you start at the bottom over there and go straight up, go to the top. Why don't you go to the top? Because that's where all the wealth and power is located. The wealth and power is at the top, not at the top of the T. When you get to the top, then you go horizontal. That's like when you build a business, you build your business straight up. When you get to the top and you got your own neighborhood built well with black businesses in it, you got this area's got a lot of prosperous businesses, then you spread out and go get somebody else's neighborhood. When you get to the top, you go take other people's neighborhoods away from them. But don't do that until you capture and control your own. Because if you don't have a community, you cannot have a successful business. Without a community, you don't have one thing that's very important. You don't have a market. No community, no market. You go into business, you're going to go out of business within about a 2-year time period. Nobody's going to drive all over Chicago trying to find your damn store. But if you put all your stores in one place and all your business, where I can go park my car, and I can get out and park my car, I can walk and find a barber shop, a cleaners, a movie theater, a drugstore, a grocery store, a restaurant, a hotel, then you got businesses. Change the next one for me. So, and then once you build these communities, you get functional communities at the bottom, which means they become functional. What I mean by function, you can take care of yourselves, control the schools and everything else in there. Then you get, and people say, well, Dr. Anderson, I can't work with these black folks you call a team because I don't trust them. You can never have trust with another black person unless you have a community. And see, back in the old days before social integration came, black folk had trust. A black person could leave home down in the old days when we had segregation and say, Miss Jones, I'm going downtown. Would you watch the house and watch the kids? I'll be back in a little while. You left your front door open, your back door open, your windows up at night. Nobody broke in. When you have a community, you know and respect and appreciate each other. You're functioning. You don't mistreat each other when you function as a community. My mother could leave all day long. We ran out and played all day long. We could go a mile from the house playing with other kids. Nobody kidnapped us, raped and robbed us, or sold in the house while we were gone, because we all knew each other. You don't know each other anymore since you've integrated. I'll bet you right now, most of you know who your next damn neighbor is. You don't see them anymore. You got to start getting, and once you build your community and you start trusting each other, then you can get cooperation. You started cooperating and pooling your money, pooling your resources, pulling your talents, pulling your brains together to be a competitive group. And then you can get accountability. You can hold some of these water-legged politicians accountable. Next one for me, please. Now, what we're going to do now is show you how this whole game works. Now, here's the powernomics principle for you, how the whole game works. What I want you all to do is start at the bottom. Once you start building these communities, understand this. Everything is vertical. The first thing you can do to empower yourselves, to enrich yourselves in our capitalist society, you must have a first floor. Your first floor is your economy. The first thing you do is build a business community here in Chicago, any place in the United States. Build a business community that can provide jobs and money, income, and products and services. You spend and you build wealth because you can redistribute wealth quicker owning a business than you can just working a job. Build you an economy right here called Blues Town, right here with the belle of Blues Town, Dorothy Tillman. Build you an economy where you can spend your money with your own people and practice group economics. Group economics means your money must bounce 8 to 12 times before it leaves your community. Hispanic money typically bounces 6 to 7 times. White money bounces 8 to 12 times. Arab and Asian money bounces 13 to 14 times. Jewish money bounces 18 times. Black money doesn't bounce once. Because as soon as you get paid, you take your posterior straight to somebody else's community and spin it. You're impoverishing yourselves by misspending your money. You're creating a balance of trade deficit. We are poor because we enrich everybody but ourselves. After I go down, I'm down in Houston, Texas, and people say, Dr. Harrison, let me take you out. See all these big, beautiful homes all the whites have? How do they get these things? Where do they get all this money for to build all these big, fine mansions? I say, it's easy. It's your money. You see, whites live off of two incomes. Hispanics live off of two incomes. Asians live off of two incomes. They live off of 100% of their money and 98% of yours. They live, so all these other groups that you're competing with live off of 198% of money. You live off of 2%. It cannot be done. But we keep trying to do the impossible. That's why we have not progressed, as I said when I started my speech, we have not progressed in 500 years. We're still stuck on the bottom because we do stuff that doesn't make any darn sense. And when I want you all to start doing under the power of numbers, when we get this plan off, we're going to start next year and start. We got a very specific, broad plan all laid out where every black in America is going to be a participant except the Sambos and Samis. We don't want them. We don't want them. We're not going to invite them. We don't have a big tent attitude about we all got to be. No, I don't want to have no big tent attitude. I don't want half of them. Half of them need to go on and get out of here, go on to heaven or someplace, and leave the rest of us alone. And I tell you, don't waste your time trying to persuade them when you leave here. Well, you know, you should understand the power-nomics movement and what we're going to be doing starting about another year across America. We're going to build big business districts in all these big major urban areas where black folk live. And see, because what will happen, let me give you a little how it will work. It's like if you try to, see, don't mess around with the food too long. See, it's like walking down the street. You look up and see a crowd of people at the bottom of a big building. There's a big skyscraping building, 30 stores up, and here's somebody that's talking about he's going to jump. And the guy walks along and says, what's wrong? What y'all applauding for? They said, well, we just telling the guy on the roof, jump, 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 jump. He said, no, don't say that. Don't do that. That's wrong. You know, every man's life is important. It's very important for that man to stay alive. He might have a family and kids and children. Let me go up there and talk to him for about 5 minutes, and I think I can talk him out of killing himself. So he goes up there, and the crowd just settles down. He goes up there on the roof and talks to the guy for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes up, the people on the ground start chatting again. Jump, 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 jump. And the guy said, no, be cool, be cool. Give me another 5 minutes. And so the crowd quiets down again, and after 5 minutes up, and then guess what, after the second 5 minutes up, they both jump. because you see, the fool convinced him to follow him. Okay, and see, I don't want you all to do that. Anybody that doesn't believe in being black, don't want to be black, let them leave them alone. Don't try. I don't care if they're in your own family. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. Because as I'm going to get into what in a few seconds, your blackness is your exceptionality. And that's your badge. That's your history. That's your unity. That's your defining cultural experience in this country. And so the key to powernomics is this. It's called exceptionality. And see, you hear Obama always on TV talking about we're an exceptional country. America is an exceptional country because we got democracy. We're the cradle of democracy because of our immigration policy, because of our humanitarian efforts around the world. America is an exceptional country. And what I say is this. Yes, America might be an exceptional country, but guess what? Black people are an exception within that exception. That there's nobody in this country and on this earth has been treated like black folk. You're totally different from everybody on this country. And let nobody mix you up with it. You are exceptional people. Nobody. And so I hear people talking about, well, Dr. what do you mean by the exceptional? Why would you put black folk in these broad, big, ambiguous categories? I'm coming back to this. And like minorities and poor folk and people of color, when blacks are exceptional. Show me, for instance, where Asians, Arabs, Hispanics, American Indians, and women and everybody else, and gays, show me where they're equal to black folk. When black people were the first people on earth, that makes them an exception. If you're the first people on earth, you don't have any equals to you. You were the first people in America. Black people were the first people in America. Not these people call themselves the Native American Indians. Those are not the real people in America. Those people came here from Asia. They crossed the Bering Straits about 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. Black people come here, and the Folsom people came here 16,000 years ago from Africa. They were the first people here. That's why you got Folsom, Arizona, Folsom, Mexico. That's why you got Folsom, Colorado, and Folsom, California. The Folsom people, you got artifacts and digs there from souvenirs and tools and instruments from Africa. The oldest people on this continent were the Folsom people, were black people from Africa. Now, how are you going to say somebody else? How did they get to be the native people? You are the native people of America. You're the native people of the world. Nobody's becoming ahead of you. So how can they be equal to you? You're the only people that came to this country that were enslaved. Nobody else came here and enslaved but you. You're the only people that were denied the right to vote. You're the only people that were classified as 3/5 of a human being. You're the only people that were classified as special property. You're the only people that the entire Constitution was framed on. You're the only people that holds an entire civil war was fought over you. And more importantly, you are the only and the most patriotic people in America. Nobody in this country, I hear all the people on these Rush Limbaugh types and the Hannitys and the O'Reillys always talking about black folk for this and black folk for that, about patriotism. Nobody in this country is more patriotic than you are. You tell them this, that Dr. Anderson told you this. You are the only people in this country, no Asian, no Arab, no Hispanic, no American Indians, anyone else. You're the only people that have fought in every war this country's ever been in. And whose mother country has never been against this country. Every other racial or ethnic extraction in this country, their mother country has fought this country, or their native nationality has been against America, except black folk. You're the only people. You're the most patriotic people in this country. And you walk on sacred ground. Quit letting people make you convinced that somehow that you are the guest. What they've done is taken the immigration thing and flipped it upside down, where immigrants now think that they are the special people and you're the guest. You got people coming in now, people coming in from Italy and Ireland because the O'Reillys and all those Rush Limbaughs, because their great-grandparents came here from a European country. They are guests. Immigrants are guests. You're not the guest. You got to tell them that you walk on sacred ground, paid for by the blood, the sweat, the tears, the suffering. that they paid for. They paid for it, and all the black janitors and cooks and maids and butlers and waiters and cotton pickers. You are sacred people and special people. Don't let nobody try to put you down by talking about you're a guest in America. Hell, everybody else here is a guest. You are their people. An immigrant is a guest. When they start bragging about their immigration status, you say, we are the only non-immigrants in America are black people. You're the only non-immigrants. They're talking about this is an immigrant nation. This is an immigrant nation. No, it's not. It's for you whites and the Asians and you Arabs, but it's not for black folk. Black folk are not immigrants. An immigrant is a person who involuntarily migrates from one place into the next and stays and establishes something. Black folk are the oldest people in the land. You're the only non-guest in the land. And they start to hear people talking about, well, what Dr. Anderson, these black folk, they're not happy. They go back to Africa. No, no, no. You follow the rules. Those who came last leave first. You all stand up and demand some respect for yourselves. And quit letting people go on TV and stop the dummies. When the whites go out and every time an issue devolves, they go find a microphone and stick it in front of the biggest dummy in the crowd. So what do you think about this? You tell him to shut his mouth. And half of you see on the talk shows every day, most of these Negroes don't know what the hell they're talking about in the first place. Got them sitting up on NBC or on the Fox channel. Well, this is what I think about race. I think that for minorities and this, now shut up and get off. They don't know what they're talking about. You are special people, and what you should be getting are the benefits of being the special people. You're the only people that are excluded from the American dream. When everybody else came in and got wealthy in the land. Just think for a second. You tell them this for a second. That what would America look like? What would America look like if black folk had been treated as immigrants? Since immigrants got everything, they wanted free. They got all the free land, the free resources, and got all the programs. If black folk, what would black folk look like? What would this country look like if, in fact, you had allowed black folk to vote as slaves and then make them slaves? What if black folk had come here like every other immigrant without being a slave? What if black folk had been allowed to vote? What if black folk had been allowed to sit on the Constitutional Committee and write the Constitution? What would this country look like if black folk had been elected to the presidency in these highest offices 200 or 300 years ago? What would this country look like if black folk had gotten all that free land and free resources and gold and silver and chrome and bauxite like everybody else? You see, there's to be a total. And what would this country look like, on the other hand, if black folk had not built the buildings, built the bridges, and picked the cotton, and picked the rice, the indigo, and tobacco? You are special people. And I want you to start doing that. Don't let me come up here and catch you down, banging your head all the time. And so, and with that speciality, then once you build this economy, you can start being special people. You take your money off the first floor. Take that money when you build these economies and around throughout the country, and you build an economy here in Chicago. Take that money off the first floor and go to the second floor. You go to the second floor, you take your money, and guess what you do? Don't worry about running for a political office. I don't need no more Negroes or need-to-grows in public office. I'd probably be better off now if 90% of the Negroes holding public office weren't even in public office. They're not representing black folk. There's no connection between putting a black person in office and black folk getting benefits, because they don't want to be black when they get to office. They want to take care of all the people. When white people come to a public office, they don't come there and say, I'm here from South Carolina, Mississippi, and Alabama. I represent all the people. No, they come, I'm representing white folk. That's what they do. Strom Thurmond and George Wallace wasn't trying to represent all the people. And black folk have to learn how to start saying, no. When you get the money on the first floor, you go to the second floor, and what you do with your money is you buy every politician. Don't worry about running for a political office. Get enough money and wealth and buy your politicians. Money controls the entire system. The system goes straight up. Money on the first floor controls the second floor, the third floor, the fourth floor, and the fifth floor. It's controlled by the first floor. The first floor makes the determination of what goes up and down on the elevators. It's the first floor that makes the difference. You take your money and buy every politician on the second floor, and those that you cannot afford to buy, you rent or lease them. And then you use them as best you can and send them up to the third floor. You send them up to the third floor. And what's the third floor? The third floor is your court system. Your court system and your police force. All these blacks on TV every night. We got to stop the police from shooting blacks. You can't stop the police from shooting black folk. You haven't got a community. You hiring them, giving them money, and paying their salaries. They're doing what you paid them to do. You gave them the badge. I go into black cities, almost like Detroit, Michigan, and all these other black cities, and the police force is almost all white. You are begging for a butt whipping. I go out to Ferguson, you got a 70% black city out in Ferguson, and guess what? The police force is almost 90% white, 97% white. You begging for it. You're saying, would y'all come in and take a badge and get a club and get a pistol and whip my butt? What you do, you take your money and you control, and you get those politicians, you make those politicians control the court system and also control the police force. See, organized crime learned this a long time ago. Organized crime would buy every politician. They'll control the attorney generals. They'll control the police departments. They'll control everybody they can control. You're not going to see the mafia running down saying, well, next week we got a major election. I got to get ready to go out here and vote. They don't give a damn about voting. They get the money and control everything. You're going to see where billionaires and millionaires going out worried about who gets elected to an office. A politician can't do a damn thing unless the people at the bottom and the first floor controls them. You watch this election, whether it's the Donald Trumps or the Atkinson, all these rich whites put billionaires. You got 500 billionaires in America, white billionaires. They're controlling that system, the whole structure from the bottom to the top. You got to try to get some money and wealth. If you don't, you're playing games, you're going to lose. And they will control the politicians. The money will control the politicians will control the courts and the police departments. And then once you get that under control, you use your money on the first floor, and you go to the third floor. The third floor, a fourth floor, I'm sorry. Go to the fourth floor. And you got to start using your money and buy some media. You got to have media. If you don't have media, you cannot contact, communicate, organize, and deal with your people. And see, right now, and we own absolutely nothing. We haven't, see, the Telcap Act of 1996, up there we had about 100-something black radio stations. We've been stripped down to about 60 or 70 now. We lost over half our black radio stations since 1996. Because nobody raised any issue over the fact that they left the Telcap Act, which says this, that white people can buy as many radio stations as they got money. They know you didn't get the 40 acres and mules. You don't have any money. You sitting in a real-life Monopoly game playing Monopoly with no money. It can't be done. So, but you got to get media. Why? We got approximately 12,000 radio stations in the United States. And guess what? Blacks own about 60 or 70 out of 12,000. We got 5,000 TV stations. Blacks don't own nothing. We got 5,000 newspapers. Blacks own daily newspapers. Blacks own 0. We got 12,000 cable systems. Blacks own 0. How in the world are you gonna make out? Are you gonna go home and pray and not about, we got the grapevine. We are hearing through the grapevine. Lord, I'm praying the Lord to help me on this now. Y'all understand? Because what I want you all to learn how to own and control things so you can communicate with your own people. And so, and we get the money off the first floor, we're going to start buying radio stations, TV stations, cable system. Now, just last year, for instance, see, every year Obama has invited white Indians to the White House. And every year now, in December, he's invited particularly 564 so-called white Indians to come to the White House to get benefits. And each time he's giving them $3.5 billion dollars every year, which means they picked up almost $15 billion already. This last year, what he did, he gave them as many radio stations, TV stations, and cable system licenses they wanted free. Now, they used the 1866 Indian Treaty to do that. But guess what? The 1866 Indian Treaty was put into place for black folk. And now the descendants of the slave-holding Indians are getting all the benefits and black folk get nothing. Because black folk won't raise Cain about the 1866 Indian Treaty and demand that every politician in this country get off his lazy duff and go out and fight for the enforcement, the fair enforcement of the 1866 treaties, which says the treaty says very specifically that black people and the descendants of black freemen and black Indians must be treated in all manners similar to how Indians or whites are treated in the country. That is a law. Now, some of you get hung up on reparations, talking about, well, we're going to get reparations. You can't get reparations by appealing to white conscience. Whites don't give a damn. They wouldn't enslave your butts in the first place. All you're asking for is to enforce the law that already exists. Enforce the law. The same thing with the Adam and Onis Treaty. The Adam and Onis Treaty said that all of North Florida, for instance, most of that land used to belong to black people. Runaway slaves used to own most of North Florida. They were the people running. That's why John Horson was down in that area. And the Seminole Indians. The Seminole Indians is a converted term for Indians that came together and integrated and intermarried with blacks. When you had the Creek and some Cherokee and the Appalachian Indians got together with blacks, runaway slaves, and they created a new tribe of Indians called Seminoles. And now that John Horse was one of the leading Indian chiefs down there, was a black man, a runaway slave. And he had Osceola, who was an Indian, who married a black woman named Morning Dew, and they were running the whole thing in North Florida. And when the blacks moved into there, that's why they built the first town in Florida, St. Augustine. That's right, St. Augustine. And blacks were running that. And then Andrew Jackson went down there saying, because the slave owner said, we want to get those black slaves back, and they got that free land down there because the land belonged to Spain. Let's go down there and get them. And Andrew Jackson illegally took forces into Florida and went down there and tried and wiped out 3 or 4 forts where black folk were staying, because black folk were dominating Florida. And one of them was called Fort Negro over in Apalachicola, which I had a house using down the river there. And most people don't know about Apalachicola, Fort Negro. Those blacks were jamming up the river, and so the whites couldn't get their food and products out from the United States down to the Gulf. They had to go past Fort Negro. And they went there one day and raided that and shot a cannonball off one of their ships, went into the armory. And they had about 375 black women and children running the forts, because most of the other blacks were out fighting whites down there, white soldiers coming down there. And that blew up and killed all those kids. They buried them in the back. If you ever go down to Apalachicola, Florida, tell them to go up to Fort Negro, which is up in the forest there. You can see the remnants of that old fort where they buried all those blacks in big ditches. You see the waves where they buried them all, like all women and kids, black women and kids. But Andrew Jackson fought him for 2 weeks before he finally beat him, because those women were out and those kids were out shooting his army. And the white slave owners rewarded him after they signed the Adam and Onis Treaty by making him the first governor of Florida after he killed all those blacks down in Fort Negro. That's why you got Jacksonville, Florida, named after Andrew Jackson. And Quincy Adams and some of them tried to prosecute him for doing some illegal acts. But anyway, but for you to get out all this information, you got to go to the fourth floor and get some media, radio stations, TV stations, and print. But you can't do it without money. And you can't, once you get them, you can't operate them unless you have businesses to buy the time, the ads on the stations. You got to start businesses. And you start, what kind of businesses you get into? Anything that's what people need or what people desire. That's what your business is. But focus on those 4 areas: food, medicine, energy, and water. Okay. So those are going to be the essential things, because right now we anticipate at a national level, we are spending water shortages coming pretty soon. When water shortages come, it's going to be followed by food shortages. It's going to be followed by that and starvation, and you're going to have people, going to be riots in the street, people going to be killing people to get water and food. And right now, and no blacks in this country control any of those items. In Detroit, Michigan, where you got had a 92% black population, Arabs went in there, and out of 146 gas stations, Arabs own 144 of them. And they own 90% of all the grocery stores, discount stores, party stores, and liquor stores. The Indians are coming into these black neighborhoods. They own all the things like the cleaners, and the cheap hotels, Dunkin' Donuts, and the 7-Elevens. The Asians control, the Koreans, they control all the black hair care, the wig shops, nail shops, all this. Black folk control nothing. You're in deep trouble. And right now, your leader right now that you got in this city, I think it's Dorothy Tillman. She's going to try to pull you all together and try to do the best she can. And the last thing is on the fourth floor. Then once you get that together, then you start working on your schools. Quit believing this lie about information is power. It's not. Information is not power. That's one of the biggest lies ever told. Information is not power unless it is connected. It's not connected. You see, right now, if I were to take a light bulb and say, here's a light bulb, now it doesn't create any light unless I do what? Screw it into a socket and connect it up. And so your education systems must got to be revised. You need to close down your schools temporarily and change the curriculum. The curriculum of those schools should be designed to address the needs. The school should be designed to address the particularly unique needs of an exceptional people. You are an exceptional people. Quit trying to do it. Well, we're going to create this and that. You're different from everybody else. There's a difference between the offsprings of the slaves and the offsprings of the slaves as masters. I remember one woman down in Tampa one day I was teaching when I was over education. She said, Dr. Anderson, you talk about the importance of our watching racial issues. She said, I treat all my kids just alike. I treat them as fairly, and I treat them all the same. I said, you need to be fired. Black kids come to school with totally different emotional, psychological, physical, financial baggage than white kids. Since we own no businesses, our schools should obviously have a business curriculum, or from the first grade all the way up, a business curriculum. They should be learning cost accounting, inventory control. They should be, before they graduate from elementary school, they should be taught to be creative and learn how to produce things, manufacture things. They should never be able to graduate from high school without either a skill in their hand or a scheme in their head. They should be learning trades the last 2 years in school. No black kid should be let out of the public school system without having a trade, either electrician, plumbing, or cooking, bricklaying, or something. You go around there and go out in construction, see who's doing all the construction work, got the job. Go out to the airports, go into the hotels. That's why our people are unemployed. We're sending all these kids to college wasting money, Half of them shouldn't even be in college. They should be in a trade school someplace, learning a trade and a skill. I got black folk coming out now with master's degrees, they master nothing. I go by McDonald's with a high school, a college degree, working at McDonald's and Burger King. Because you know why? Because we don't have any business communities for them to work in. Our next slide, please. Okay, I guess they went to sleep on me. Okay, okay, I think I should start wrapping up now. Is that okay? I'm going to give you all some chores I want you to carry out now. Oh, okay, this same thing I just told you. Next one. I just went through that with you. Next one. Now, this is extremely important. If you're going to be competitive when you start building these communities, these are some of the things you need to have. And remember, I'm showing you these graphs so that you can sort of embed it in your mind. You have 3 levels that you got to have an empowered group. You got to have the first level needs to be a grassroots elements. You must have a very strong, well-built grassroots base, like a triangle. By what do I mean by grassroots? All empowered groups have a large following, a massive group that they can depend on to carry out the work, to do the things that have to be done. That's why in the white society, they've always had them. They had things like the whites of the Camellia. They had the Black Horse Brigade. They had the White Citizens Council. They had the Ku Klux Klan. They got the Tea Party. They got all kinds of groups that do their dirty work or their clean work for them. They take care of what needs to be done. We have to be able to have a very strong grassroots elements in this city for those blacks who got other things to do but got time to participate in the grassroots movements and to help us do the work. We need workers down here at the grassroots levels. As you must have. Whites do that, Asians have that, everybody have that but us. And when you move up again to the next level above that, you must have think tanks. That's why I created the Harvest Institute for political and economic empowerment and to make black folks self-sufficient and competitive. And that's why I asked you all to go to the website, www.harvestinstitute.org, and make contributions. It's a tax-exempt nonprofit entity. We are a think tank. We create strategies, blueprints, and recipes and cookbooks to try to figure out problems and try to solve them for you and tell you how to respond to them. And whites got all kinds of think tanks. They have about 5,000 white think tanks. And they have about a $500 million budget that they operate off of. They're the ones that provide all the information to the right-wing groups. When you hear them all on the Fox channel all saying the same thing, that's because they're being coached. They're being trained. They're being studed to be able to do the things and say the same thing at the same time about every issue. We don't have the Harvest Institute is the only one I'm aware of that tries to put out newsletters and file lawsuits on your behalf. We got lawsuits right now in the federal government now. We've got a lawsuit there at the local level. We got it in the appeals court. We got a lawsuit in the Sixth Circuit Court, and we've been appealing to the Supreme Court on your all's behalf for the 1866 Indian treaties. And yet we have to get money to try to be competitive. But again, we get very little money. Most of our black people rather pay taxes rather than send money and get a write-off at the end of the year. They rather pay the taxes. But we would say that Harvest Institute would send you a letter saying, thank you for your donation of blah, 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 blah. When you file your income tax, you don't have to pay that. You discount that down. And see, black folk right now in another month will have all these big tax bills coming up. And they have nothing to write off as a discounted down or deduction. They rather, all other groups deduct. That's why all these big rich whites, they put in all kind of money to maintain all these think tanks like the Heritage Foundation, the Cato Institute, and all these other groups they got. That they subsidize their think tanks. You need to subsidize yours. Our wealth class doesn't give us any money. Our wealth class spends most of their money in what we call conspicuous consumption. Conspicuous consumption means I got a house now, I got 17 bedrooms in it, I got 14 Mercedes, and I wear about a 14-pound gold necklace on my neck. And so we don't get anything from them, but that's okay. That's okay. Because see, I'm not obligated. As a matter of fact, I'll be perfectly honest with you. If black folk would have called tomorrow and said, Dr. we ain't gonna never contribute a penny to a Harvest Institute. We're never gonna buy one of your books. I would say, boy, I'm relieved. I mean, I can go home and relax or watching TV all the time like everybody, put my feet up on the table. I can finally break free of this inborn inbred feeling I have to always fight for black folk because nobody else will fight for them. Okay, the next slide for me, please. Now things I want to wrap up. Here's what I want you to do. Avoid all broad and ambiguous terms and labels. Don't let anybody put you into it. And if everybody puts you into a broad category like minorities, poor folk, and people of color, what I want you to do is cut them, then slap them afterwards. Just stay black for me, okay? Now, the next one is to build communities instead of neighborhoods. I don't need no more neighborhoods. A neighborhood is where you eat and sleep. The Sheraton Hotel and the Holiday Inn, those are neighborhoods. Eating and sleeping, that's a neighborhood. Communities where you store your heritage, your history, your people, your food, your supplies, your jobs, your income, your wealth, your power, your history is all stored in a community. You don't have any communities to store anything in it. The next one is a shift from altruism. I'm sick and tired of black folk always willing to be the moral conscience of the nation, to save the world, and they can't save their own damn people. Quit always going out and trying to save everybody else. Well, Dr. Anderson, I got to go out and do that. I got to go to Africa. I got to go to Europe. I got to go. Now, I want you to keep your butt at home and save your own people. Never walk off and leave your front door open, wide open. You got a wife and kids in there with no food on the table. You go off to save the world. When people start telling you, well, you got to go help minorities and poor folk and gays and go down to the border and bring in all these illegal immigrants. And like Obama, he's going to go in and put up $3 billion to try to save 100,000 kids coming across the border. I said, well, I wish somebody would take that $3 billion and go into Chicago and Detroit and Dick Harris and save some of these darn black kids. So stop trying to be so altruistic. Start having some group self-interest. Take care of your own people first. Put your interests before anybody else's interests. It's like, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna tell you now. See, as a pilot, I don't fly that much anymore. I don't want to play that. But as a pilot, one of the first things I would tell my passengers is this: that if we get over 10,000 feet at night or doing 30,000 feet at daytime, we lose cabin pressure. An oxygen mask will automatically fall down over your seat with an AM door will push it down over the panel. And when the mask falls down in a dire circumstance and we lose cabin pressure, put the mask on yourself first. And our people won't even do that. As in a crisis situation like we're in now in this country, where they're shooting black folk every other day and beating black folk all around the country, and black person jumps up and the mask falls down and says, are there any minorities and midgets and humps back there need a mask? Anybody back there need a mask? I have to sit down, fool, and put the mask on your own. So I also want you to learn to become producers. Stop being consumers. Right now, you're 100% consumers and 0 producers. Learn how to start producing some of the stuff that you all need. You all need shoes and clothes and eyeglasses, just like everybody else. And go buy from your own people. Make your money bounce 8 to 12 times with your own people. And under the power of numbers principle, I want you to start, when we start our program, I want you to take every dollar out of your pocket, out of your wallet, and I want you to start putting a check mark on it. Do not let that money go out of a non-black hand until you got at least 12 check marks on it. And so right now, black folk brag about they got an annual $1 trillion annual disposable income. Just think, instead of bragging about we got a $1 trillion annual disposable income. That's why everybody should come in our community and sell stuff to us. No, wrong. With Dr. Allen, we got consumer power. There's no such thing as consumer power. Consumerism is a weakness. It's not a power. That's like a crack addict bragging about how much crack he smokes and consumes, how much power he got. It's the guy who's selling the crack that's got the power. Am I losing you all on this stuff? So what you want to do is, if you want to be the producer, you say, now let me be the one producing the crack. Let somebody else buy it for so once in a while. Let me get off of it and get a rest and a break for my people. The next thing I want you to do is avoid engaging in horizontal issues. Again, gender is a horizontal issue. Religion is a horizontal issue. You got people all around the world belonging to different religions. Quit busting your butt to put a religion before you put your own people and your own skin color. I want you to be like Paul in the Bible. When they told Paul that, we're not going to commission you to go off and try to preach the gospel and save the world. And Paul said in the Bible, I don't mind going off and preaching, trying to save the world, but first I'm going to save Jews. And you need to say the same thing. Y'all don't mind helping once in a while. Once I take care of some things, I don't mind helping Asians, Arabs, Hispanics, midgets, humpbacks, piano players, anything. But first, I'm going to save black folk. And another horizontal issue is the political powers, political issues, and political parties. That's a horizontal issue. All kind of people belong to the various political parties. What you got to do is say, I don't care about the political parties. Neither Democrats nor the Republicans do a damn thing for black folk. You all got to learn how to start playing this game. And said, no, I don't want. If you want power, you can become the most powerful people in this country in a year's time if you listen to what I'm telling you in these powernomics principles. Buy those books and read them. You can be the most powerful people if you play the game right. And say, no, I don't want to be a Democrat. I don't want to be a Republican. Now, I've been a Democrat most of my life, but I'm an independent now. I ran Jimmy Carter's campaign down in Florida and then some in the South. I ran governor's campaigns, attorney general's campaigns, congressional campaigns, major campaigns for mayors, for office. And I ran them. I don't mean I participated in them. I was a campaign chairman. I know politics. What you're going to do is say, no, I'm going to play this game. I'm going to play it to win. What you do is say, I'm going to become an independent. The biggest party going to be the independent party. And you tell Democrats coming up for this next year, and you tell the Republicans, we don't want to belong to any one of your parties. What we're going to do, based on powernomics principles, we're going to withdraw from both political parties, and we're going to start our own black independent party. And we start this black independent party. What we're going to do, I don't want you all, when you start the party, don't run into candidates. Please do not run into candidates. You want to use maximum power. What you say is that we're going to have a black independent party, and we're going to vote across this nation as a block, but we're not going to run into candidates. What we're going to do is this. We will vote for, in block, anybody, regardless of color, yellow, pink, polka dot, green, any color you come up with, as whoever promises the most and deliver to black folk, we'll vote for you and put you in there as a block. And instead of like now this next election where both parties already have decided that you all are insignificant, they're going to go after the Hispanic vote, you can flip the switch by reversing things in social engineering and say, you're going to go chase down the Hispanic vote. You go ahead and get it. But I'll tell you one thing, though. Most of those Hispanics can't vote. And right now we can. You go ahead and play a little silly game about you're going to shut down, we're going to ignore blacks now, and then we ain't going to promise blacks a damn thing. We never in the history of this nation has either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party or a candidate, black, white, green, purple, yet or anything you come up with, has ever promised and delivered anything specifically and solely to black folk. Nobody's ever promised you. You say that, but whoever will promise and deliver to us some specific, tangible resources and benefits, we'll put your butt in office. And you say we are 43 million strong. Do you know what every political candidate would say then? If there's a chance I can pick up 43 million black votes, hell, I'm going to forget about it. I'm going after those votes. They will cease and desist in taking you for granted. Listen to what I'm telling you. At that point, they'll come looking for you. And they say, what do y'all need? What do y'all want? And I'll slap the first one and say, I want some civil rights and social integration. No, I want something I can measure. You tell me this, that Dr. Anderson told us, don't ever look for anything that you can't count and measure and know that you got it. You can't touch it and feel it. You want some money, money, money. They said, well, Dr. Anderson, we'll get you a job. I said, I don't need a job. I need money. I can always get it. I don't need no damn job. The next thing is buy black. You start your businesses, always have a philosophy. I'm gonna buy black. Every time you buy, I'm gonna buy black, but I'm gonna sell to anyone and everybody. You use a strategy called cost-benefit analysis. Cost-benefit analysis means where do I spend my money to get the benefits from it? Do I get the biggest benefit and bang for my dollar by spending it with a black person, or do I get it by spending it with an Asian and Arab? You'll find out that you get your biggest benefit for spending for your own people. Because the minute you put your money outside your own community and outside your race, what you do, you allow those people to take that money and pay their insurance, their house note, put their kids in college, and feed and clothe their kids. Instead of always talking about, well, Dr. Adams, I don't want to spend my money with black people because his stuff costs 20 cents more. And plus that, his bread is not as fresh as the bread the other guy's bread coming every morning. The black bread only comes in every 2. Who cares? You tell him, so now I'm going to go buy it from it, and I'll give him that extra 20 cents, an extra $1. That's what Jews do. Jews go in and say, see this? To one Jew say, I'm going to sell you that for $1. Jews say, fine, I'll take it. And they come back a month later and say, but I'm selling this back to you. And he said, I'll take that too. They buy from each other. You learn to buy from your own people and get the total benefits of spending your money with your own people and making it bounce. And tell the black people that are in business that I'm going to give you a certain amount of time. If you go into business, I'm going to give you about 6 months or a year to get your prices down if you can get them down. Because most of them can't get it down because we don't have a vertical system, and black folk have to pay almost 30% more for their product than whites do. They're the last one to get the delivery, and they always get the inferior product. So sometimes black stores cannot drop their price down as well as other groups. But you spend your money with your own people. I got in Washington, D.C., I got Cambodians and Vietnamese that'll drive 35 miles one way just to go to a Vietnamese and Cambodian store. And I got black people that won't go 2 blocks out of the way to go buy from a black person. And and in that vein, I remember when Howard Johnson came in, I was going by Howard Johnson's store when it was all white. And I would go by there once in a while because I used to love to get banana splits. I would go by and get me one of these big banana splits, and I walk in there and go up to the counter, and it was white. And as soon as I walk in, the white girl runs up and say, well, can I help you at the takeout counter? I said, yes. Would you give me one of those big, nice banana splits? She said, yes. I waited for about 5 minutes, and I got my banana split. But one day I did that, and I looked and I saw a suggestion box with some cards and said, do you have any suggestions? And I said, let me take one of these cards and write a note. I said, because I see more blacks coming into this Howard Johnson's. And so I said, dear sir, owner of this business, I see increasingly you have more blacks coming in as customers. I think it would be most appropriate if you were to hire more blacks on the staff here rather than having all these just whites. And I put it in the suggestion box. I came back about 2 months later, and now I came in, I looked at the door, opened the door, and I looked down the counter, and there was a black woman there now. I said, oh, Lord, they've taken my suggestion. I just appreciate this. And she was laying on the counter like this. Looking at the paper, and I stood there at the takeout counter. I waited for about 10 or 15 minutes, just standing like this. And finally, she says, "You want something?" I said, "Yes, ma'am. Would you give me another one of them damn suggestion cards out of the box over there?" Some of our people are just not ready. And so don't support any group or any organization which which compete with black folk. Any of these groups that you find competing with you, don't support them. And tell the Republican Party and the Democratic Party that you're not going to get any black votes unless you come into our community like this theater. I want you all to have every black candidate or white candidate running for an office this next year come right into the Harold Washington Theater, come on this stage. I want you all to invite them in. I want Dorothy Tillman to invite them in. I want you all to back her up. And I want all you're here today, I want you to promise across your heart and hope to die, you show up and sit right where you are now. And every candidate that walks in, you tell that candidate, you got 5 minutes to go up on the stage. You line them up. So you got 5 minutes to go on that stage and tell us very specifically what you're going to do for black people. And what you're going to do for blacks in Chicago, and we don't want to hear a darn thing about what you're going to do for minorities and poor folk and gays and transsexuals. Come right and give it 5 minutes and tell us what you're going to do. And don't give it that minority people of color crap. And if they don't have anything to say, well, you can sit down. Next one, you get your butt out. Next one, come on up. And that's the way you deal with them. And every year, you use this center to make every candidate, I don't care whether he's a local candidate, for running for city council or county commissioner or for Congress, you bring them in here and you all show up like this. And even you're tired and sleepy, pretend that you're wide awake and say, no, you got to, what we want to know is what you're going to do for us. And don't buy that business about, well, I might hire me a secretary, a black secretary, or I might put up some basketball rims on the basketball court. You said, no, we want things that's tangible, that Dr. Anderson said we can measure and count, that we can take to the bank. Okay? We're in a capitalist society. We want some capital. And you do that with every year. Now, starting this year, from this month, next month, December, I want you to bring every candidate on this stage. And please do me a favor. I love you all, so don't let this be a one-way love. Y'all show up and support her and make sure every candidate show up and you all hold their feet to the fire and say that. And even we elect you to office. And then you must promise to come back in 2 years, a half midterm, and tell us what you've done for our people. If you haven't done anything, you need to quit and resign. What I want you all to do for me now, these are things that are very important. If you got a pencil, write these down. These things have to be done immediately. Not next week, not when you feel like it, when you get around to it. Starting tomorrow. Here's the thing I need you to do. One is to mobilize a black exceptionality movement in this country. And I want you to start telling everybody on radio, TV, and your conversation in place that we are exceptional people. We are black and we are exceptional. We're not like anybody else. We've never been treated like anybody else. We've not been mistreated like anybody else. We never received what everybody else got. We've never been treated like immigrants. We're extraordinarily different people. And quit trying to pretend that you somehow, people say, well, you're no different. I said, yes, I am different. So my ancestors were different. And you all let people know that you are different. You've been treated differently. And all these immigrants coming into the country, the O'Reillys and the Hanleys and the Rush Limbaughs, nobody mistreated them or castrated or lynched them. And now they talk, well, you all know different. Yes, you are different. You weren't treated. But you got to have an exceptionality movement. Everything you say now, we are the exceptional people in this country. We're not immigrants. We're not guests in America. So that's the first thing you must do. The second thing, I want you to start rebuilding black businesses in this city and in this community. Very important. Rebuild black, and start right here. You got Blues Town right where you are. All these posts are noted for you, for black musicians. The third thing I want you to do is to get on every radio station you get on, anytime you can get on it, and start telling everybody, oppose these open-door immigration policies. These immigrants are replacing you. They're taking over all the things that should have gone to you. They are calling them. There's no justifiable reason for Arabs, Asians, Hispanics, Eskimos. Eskimos haven't picked no damn cotton. You got them in affirmative action programs. You started holding everybody's feet to the fire and said, no, we oppose the immigration laws in this country because right now the national administration plans on bringing in another 100,000 Arab Syrians in the first of the year. They've already brought in 100,000 and put them down in the Southwest, in New Mexico and Arizona. These people are coming in, they're going to dominate and take over all the businesses, drive around the city, see who own all the businesses. You said, and what you're going to say, we're going to oppose it until you do this, until you do one or two things. Either you change these open-door immigration policies and laws, or two, that you put black people in America into a protected class. They got the American Indians in a protected class where they get in and everything they want free. And we're supposed to have been in a protected class all the way back to 1866 when we had the Freedmen Bureau. The Freedmen Bureau was supposed to have been put blacks into a protected class because black folk couldn't take care of themselves. They couldn't do it. They didn't have and own anything. And I want black folk in this country to go into a protected class either by the national administration or by the state government, saying black people are to be protected. They're entitled to certain benefits because they're exceptional people. And also, when they start talking about setting up all these refugee places and sanctuary cities all over America, you tell them to go into Chicago and set up a sanctuary city so these black kids now in the gangs can also, and all these blacks that are unemployed can get all those benefits that you're giving to these Arabs and Hispanics coming to this country. So you oppose all these, and said you're totally opposed to immigration until they begin to get these benefits for black people. Now, why am I telling you that in bottom line? Is because you all may have seen a movie back about 1960s where a seed pod came in from outer space. You remember that movie? And what was it called? The Body Snatchers. Good. Thank you, sister. The Body Snatchers. Well, what these immigrants are body snatchers. Now, in the movie they call them aliens, and we call them now aliens, immigrants coming across. The body snatchers. They come into this country and get close to black folk by saying, we're minorities, and we're poor folk, we're people of color. And next thing you know, your body disappears and theirs replace your body. You got your immigrants are body snatchers in America. They're displacing you, and you started calling them the body snatchers and say, what are they doing for black folk? You're replacing everything, body snatching from you. The fourth thing is that you're going to withdraw from all national political parties. I just told you, set up your own black independent party. And don't run into candidates, but you tell every candidate you will vote in a block for anybody who promises the most and delivers the black folk. And number 5, you form a black party, then vote, that's the block. Number 6, reparations, yes. Affirmative action, no. I want you now to start, even though I have the dubious honor of writing the first affirmative action plan in the United States, I want you to kill off the affirmative action plan now. I raised it and gave birth to it, but I want it to die. Because now everybody getting all the benefits are not blacks. And what you say now is we no longer be included in affirmative action. What we want is reparations instead. No more affirmative action, because right now you're not getting anything out of affirmative action. And here's what will happen: if black people right now were to publicly go on every radio station, TV station, saying we're going to withdraw, and we no longer want to be included in any public policies or affirmative action programs dealing with affirmative action benefits. If you all were to pull out, the affirmative action programs in the country would collapse. Because there's no justifiable reason for having an affirmative action plan for white women, for Asians, for Arabs and Hispanics. They weren't even in the country. 92 to 94% that general of all Arabs, Asian, Hispanics in the country came here since 1970. Nobody's enslaved and Jim Crow segregated them. They are guests. And they're tied into the affirmative action program, getting all the benefits. If you pull out, it's like a balloon. Stick a pin in the balloon, it would collapse. Then you say, now we're going for something that nobody else can claim. And that is reparations, because nobody's been damaged but you. And that's why I said again, that's why I want you to be black. If you go black, nobody else can claim to be black. No white's going to claim to be black. They'll steal everything else from you, but they won't steal the blackness. They can steal your music and your dance and your culture and your history. And like Paul Mooney says, then they'll take everything from black folk. They caught black people with a headache. They're going to say, hey, you niggas don't need no headache. Give me that headache. What do you black folk know about a damn headache? Y'all ain't entitled to no headache. Let me have it. They'll take the headaches from you. And last one is number 7, is demand a protected status or a Marshall Plan across this country. You tell the National Administration we want a Marshall Plan. They set up a Marshall Plan after World War II to take care of the Germans and to rehabilitate them after the World War II bombings. And also we had a .4 program for the Japanese where we put in billions of dollars in helping them. And yet you've enslaved and Jim Crow segregated black folk for 500 years. They haven't put a penny in yet to go specifically and solely to black folk. So I want you to demand that black people be put into a protected class in this country, and tell them, and don't do what we always do. I had one of my friends who was Hispanic in Florida. He said, Doctor, that's the difference between you and your black people. He said, you all always beg for and march for, for things that you all want. He says, as Hispanics, we demand, and that's why we get. And I love you all, and I'm going to quit here. I know you're tired. I love you all, and I hope I gave you some things to work on. Now, follow these plans, okay? Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you.